In the front yard of the home where she was born, Zonke has buried her 2 sisters and her own baby. All dead, she says, from AIDS. What has it done to your family?
A terrible thing. Terrible.
She lives here now with her mother, a little brother, her 2 remaining sisters, one of whom is HIV positive, and her orphan niece, in 2 tiny huts with no running water. She is their sole support, and although she herself has AIDS, she initially decided not to take the antiretroviral therapy, or ARV drugs, the most effective proven treatment for AIDS.
So last year I started to sick.
You started to feel sick?
Yes, I feel sick. Always I go to doctor. Always I go to doctor. The doctor told me to go to hospital and started to use ARVs, and I said no, I can't.
Why? Why not take the drugs?
The reason why I said no, what can I call her? She's working in Department of Health. Was talking into the radio, telling us to use veg and other food which is healthy.
I think it is important for us to also understand that it is not just antiretrovirals. We've got traditional medicine that we know actually averts the AIDS-related diseases.
In a country that leads the world in HIV infections, South Africa's health minister, Manto Shabalala Msimang, has been slow to roll out ARV treatment and is equivocal on its merits. Traditional medicine.
Yes.
Substitute for the ARV drugs?
I must say, and I must repeat to say, ARVs are not a cure. And I challenge anybody to say to me, ARVs cure HIV. They don't. So if you can get any other thing that would help you to ensure that your wellness as a sick person is restored, so be it.
To the dismay of AIDS treatment advocates, the health minister has actively promoted the use of so-called traditional remedies and nutrition, seemingly as viable alternatives to ARV therapy, and has promoted the idea that the ARV drugs are themselves toxic and cause harm. In some places you're called Dr. Garlic, as I'm sure you know.
Sometimes Dr. Beetroot.
Dr. Beetroot, yes.
Yes, and Dr. Garlic and Dr. Lemon.
You laugh.
Well, because I think the message is getting through and I'm quite excited about it.
The implication is that somehow beets and garlic and sweet potatoes and all these other fanciful vegetable ingredients will not just slow the onset of AIDS, but somehow prevent the onset of AIDS. It sows confusion in the populace. There's no doubt about that.
UN Special Envoy for AIDS in Africa and Canadian diplomat Stephen Lewis says behind it is a deeper, stubborn refusal by some of South Africa's highest officials, including President Thabo Mbeki, to accept the now long-held scientific conclusion that AIDS is caused by HIV.
President Mbeki said it cannot be the virus alone. We must look at other issues that predispose people to the immune system being depressed. And I am of the same view also.
It is almost beyond the realm of rationality that Thabo Mbeki would believe any of this junk, but apparently some of it seeped through.
The South African government's controversial position is based in part on the work of a small cadre of close advisors from the U.S. and elsewhere that have become known as the AIDS denialists, though they prefer the term AIDS dissenters. One of their leading advisors is New York-based scientist Dr. Roberto Giraldo.
We can cure AIDS completely. That is very easy. It's very cheap. It's very simple.
But that you're a very influential man in South Africa.
Yes. For me, Cynthia, AIDS is not an infectious disease. It's not a sexually transmitted disease, and it's not caused for HIV/AIDS.
And that's what you tell the government of South
Yes.
Africa. Roberto Giraldo.
Yes, I know him.
Do you respect his work?
Yes, I do, of course. I do respect his work.
It's a few American scientists whom I regard as poseurs and charlatans who have persuaded people in South Africa, senior to the administration, that HIV and AIDS are not related.
For speaking out, Lewis has been banned from operating on behalf of the United Nations in South Africa.
I am allowed to pass through South Africa en route to elsewhere, but I'm not allowed in South Africa in my official capacity.
You've banned him, however, from working in AIDS in South Africa.
Not because of the statements that he made, and I'd rather we rest that discussion right there. And he knows I wrote him a letter and told him why it was inappropriate at that particular point in time for him to come to South Africa, until he apologized about things that he had said about my country. But I don't want to discuss Stephen Lewis at the moment.
I cannot engage in the activities of the envoy as I do in all other countries.
And yet the AIDS deniers are welcome.
And yeah, well, that's an interesting juxtaposition. I never thought of that. Yes, the AIDS deniers are welcome, and I'm entirely unwelcome.
And the tragedy of this, Lewis says, is that on the continent of Africa, South Africa alone has the resources, if not the will, to deliver the ARVs to its over 5.5 million infected citizens.
Not only would it benefit the government of South Africa and the people of South Africa, but every government in the world would be at South Africa's feet, because we all want South Africa to succeed. It's the centerpiece of the continent. How can it be allowed to die in pieces?
And it's not succeeding because of bad ideas.
It's not succeeding because of ideas which have poisoned the response and slowed the response. And as a result, people are dying in huge numbers, 800 to 1,000 a day, unnecessarily.
You know that in the international community, there are many who hold you personally responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of South Africans, believing that your message has led them to not take medicine that's available to them. How do you respond to that?
I don't know how you can hold me responsible when I tell nothing else but the truth. I think all that we need to do with these complexities of HIV and AIDS is to put options to people and let them choose.
But with Zonke, it seems, all of her choices are painful. She and her family rely on a monthly government grant of $120, but she says she can only collect it as long as her T-cell count is dangerously low. She knows that if she chooses the ARV treatment, her health could improve enough that she would have to forfeit her only income. Essentially, what would be for us $4 a day, you're willing to sacrifice your life. Is that what you're saying? If you stop taking the drugs, what's going to happen?
Yes.
You'll die.